I am your host from Sylvan, Karen, and I'm part of the Sylvan product and documentation team. We are talking today about Viewer and Export to Excel, and the class I expect it to run about 30 minutes or so, and then however many questions we might have afterward, we can chat after that. So for today, when we're talking about Viewer and Export to Excel functionality, we're going to cover a few topics, and one is why you would want to export to Excel and the options you have available to use that functionality. So two of the reasons you're going to think about using Export to Excel are to satisfy requests from users who want to get either report-like information out of the application, so something that looks nice, has headers, footers, maybe some shading or graphics to help people understand what they're looking at. And you'll also have the opportunity to use Export to Excel if you're just thinking about raw data files that someone might need. So if someone wants to take their data from Stratum, from Viewer, put it into another application, do some manipulations with it, combine it with other data that's not currently in Viewer, that would be a data file that the Export to Excel could help you fulfill the request for. And you'll have two options when you think about exporting to Excel, one of which is an ad hoc one-time request, and that will utilize the Export to Excel feature that is in all of our views. Anyone can export to Excel. And there's a second way that you can think about exporting to Excel that is a little more automated once you've set it up, and that would be if you need to provide a report or a data file to someone on a reoccurring schedule or reoccurring basis. And that will make use of our Stratum broadcast server offering, which allows you to work with things called actions and broadcast groups and broadcast schedules to get your reports or your data files out to the needed audience. Before we actually look at the product and how to use this feature, we'll just kind of cover a few more points about reports and data files, ad hoc versus broadcast server. So when you're thinking about ad hoc reports, you only need to see once in a while or to get started pardon me, in shaping a report that would become a recurring report. You have the Export to Excel feature in Viewer, and that's available anytime from any view. It will create an Excel file containing all the data from your current view. And if you're thinking about doing a report this way, providing a report this way, one thing that you can consider doing to dress up the data and help your users identify patterns in it are to include charts. You can also include conditional formats that allows you to put in shading, text coloring, formatting, also assign icons that help people figure out more quickly than just scanning the raw data. They can find out if there's outliers or patterns or certain conditions they might be looking for. You also want to think about giving your view a meaningful name and description, and I'll point out why as we look at the resulting export from the Export to Excel feature. And part of that plays into a new feature which we have is a view detail page, and we'll show you what that looks like. It's new as of version 6.7 of Viewer. And we'll also think about considerations of how to provide a live view or a live link to the view that served as the content for your report. If you have a report that you've sent out once before or you've been starting to put together to fulfill someone's report needs and you find out your users are like, oh, I love this, I need to see it, let's say, every Monday morning, can you get it to me every Monday morning? That's when you want to think about using Stratum Broadcast Server. So you could go in manually, run your view, export it, email it out every week, every Monday, or you can use Broadcast Server, which takes care of that for you. It leverages some automation scheduling features so that you can take your report content, which would still be your view, and you assign it to something called an action, and you can pick who it goes to, and you can group it together with other actions and schedule it to send out reports to a group of recipients or one recipient. One thing to think about, a benefit for broadcast server usage in terms of giving reports out to folks, not only is it helps automate things for you, it also leverages Stratum Viewer security. So the Excel file that gets created by these actions in the broadcast server will only contain the data that your recipient is authorized to see. So you're leveraging the Stratum Viewer security that's already defined over your data. I'll quickly just touch upon these same points from the perspective of a data file. And again, a data file might be a request, just the raw data. Your user doesn't need to see any special formatting or charts, conditional formatting. They want to take that raw data, use it in some other way. I'm not sure, even if you don't know what that way is initially, you can still provide them with that raw data. And you can do that either with the Export to Excel functionality, and again, that will create an Excel file, and all the data that's in your current view will be part of that data export. That also will provide them with a view detail page as part of that export, which we'll talk about when we look at some examples. There are some things you want to consider, and I'll show you this in our demo, when you're providing a data file to someone versus a report. And that will involve keeping levels on a single axis, using a feature called repeating values, and there's some considerations when it comes to charts, totals, and calculations in the view that serves as a source for your data file. So if you're just getting kind of things pieced together for someone, trying to figure out if this is what they need, you can use the Export to Excel feature as your ad hoc one-time report. If you know someone needs that data file on a regular basis, or they like what you've put together, then you can think about automating things for yourself with that delivery of that data file by using the broadcast server. And again, you're going to assign a view that serves as the source of your data to an action. You'll select the recipients, assign it to a predefined schedule, and then when you send out, or when the action sends out the data file to each recipient, if there's more than one, that file will only contain the data they're authorized to see based on the security that is set up within Stratum Viewer. I'm going to switch over here. Let's escape out of Excel for a second and go into my demo environment. And we'll actually look at reports, data files, and the Export to Excel and the Action feature. So I'm starting off here on my Stratum homepage. There is a new feature I'm going to take advantage of to run the first view that I want to show you, and that is called the Favorite and Recently Used Views window. This will be available if you are at 6.7 or thinking of upgrading. You can flag views that you use frequently, and they'll show up in your Favorite Views side of the window, and we will also automatically track your last 25 or so views, and grouping it by older, last week, this week. So the view I want to show you today is my sales amount by region and brand. And this view I put together as to satisfy a report request. I had someone who wanted to see actual sales amount data for the current month of the current year compared to that same period last year. They wanted to see a percent of change between those two figures, so I've set up a calculation. You'll also see I've got some nice conditional formatting properties set up here, or they can quickly find out, oh, is the value greater than 20%? Is it less than 0? I've also provided them with a year-to-date for this year amount, and same period last year, and then a year-to-date percent of change. Data is organized by region. Got 2 different regions, and by product brand. And I also have put together a chart for the user. So in the report, they'll see this chart, which compares the year-to-date this year, year-to-date last year for the actual sales amount. So this report, I'm pretty confident this is what my user needs. I'm going to use the Export to Excel option to send that report, or to get the report ready, and then I'll email it off to my user. And there we go, I'll save that, and I'll open it. So if you're, let me hide some things here to make it a little easier for us to look at this. Collapse the ribbon. I'm going to pause here for a second and just also synchronize my screen to make sure you're seeing this as clearly as I am. I forgot to do that at the start of our session. So hopefully you're seeing things a little more clearly now if there was any issues earlier. What we have here and our goal in providing you with an export to Excel and a report, meeting a report needs for someone is that your output looks what the view looked like, and that's what we have here. It's hard to see the top of this Excel file, but the name, I'll kind of bring it down in here. The name of the view comes into play, and having it being meaningful comes into play, first of all, with the name of the file that we give the export. It's the view name. And the name also appears down in the tab for the view data, and also there's a tab for the chart data, which we'll look at. But as I pointed out, this report looks like what your view looked like. We've got the actual sales data. We have our region. The user can scroll forward, backward to see more of that information. We also have our calculations, but I do want to point out something. These values here are actually the static values that are the result of that calculation in Viewer. So the actual expression that gave us this sales percent of change figure is not part of your export. You can see as I click on different cells, the value of the percentage is what's there, not the expression that takes these two data columns to give you the end result. If you have a chart attached, you will have a second tab, and that will, again, look exactly like it did in your view. And the new part of our exports is this View Detail tab. So our View Detail tab will, again, here's where the meaningful name, the meaningful description come into play. We include that in the output of your export to Excel file if you're using Viewer 6.7. And this is a live link back to the view. We give you the date it was created, total number of rows and columns. If there are any filters or sorts applied, that would be described for you here, so you know what is filtering the data, if anything. One tip that I would give you is that you can make use of this new part of the export. If you're going to now, you like this report, you want to email it out to your users, go ahead and copy that view name and description, and then you can use that in the email that you send out. I'm going to just do a copy paste. And let's grab that file that we just exported. Comes up in my recent items list. I've got myself here, but you can have whoever you need to send it out to. Here is the new report. And just a little tip here, if you are trying to encourage other folks to make use of Viewer and your environment, and you want to encourage a little bit of independence in reporting or use of views, you can encourage them by including this view link and telling them they can run the view as well. Let's say you too. You too can run this view. Click below. Okay? So we would send that off, and that fulfills our ad hoc needs for this report. What if we get a request for someone now needs this every Monday morning, and we want to have that happen without us initiating things every Monday morning? And that's where you'll think about the use of the actions and broadcast server. If you right-click in your view, there's an option for actions. I already have some actions set up in this environment, so I'm going to choose an existing action, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I have a weekly sales report action that I'm going to add this view to. I'll confirm that. Whoops, I think I already attached this view to this action as I was practicing. So that's good to know it's already assigned. I will exit here. And I will go in and show you the physical action that includes that view. This is one of my administrative pages I have available to me because I'm set up as an administrator. Here is my action. It's a weekly sales report. I have sent it. It's going to be sent to the user named Kim. She is the one who requested this report. I could add more than one user. I could add a group of users. I'm distributing it by email. I can customize some of the email properties. And here is that view that we were just looking at that is assigned to the action. You'll notice there's 3 other views that are assigned, and those all 4 will get processed as part of this report request. And that will be sent out as a single file, so all 4 views will have tabs within that export that the end user gets. This action is attached to something called a broadcast group that is also attached to a schedule, and this is what sets up the process for getting things generated every Monday morning for my end user. Let's go back. Before I talk about data files, I did want to show you one other view to give you a sense of what the View Detail tab looks like when you have some filters or sorts in place, and then we'll come back to talking about data files. I'm going to just open this. This view has filtering applied to it. So it has region, rep broker. I'm only looking at a certain region and a certain set of rep brokers. That filters my entire view, and I have one sort attached to it on my sales percent of change column, and it's a descending sort. I just wanted to give you a peek at that, of what that tab looks like when there is filtering in place in your source view. We'll close that. Let's close that. And we'll go back into my favorites window and go back to our original view that we were starting with. Now let's shift over and talk about this from the perspective of data files. And when I talk through this piece of things, I'm also going to show you how to set up an action from scratch. But first of all, what I need to do for my user who just wants to see this data in its raw state is take out some of the features that I had set up for the benefit of someone who wanted to look at this as a report. Before I forget, let's save this as a different view. They're also going to want to look at product data, so we'll add that in a minute. Product data file. I'm going to keep that in my personal views, keep it for myself. I'm going to make this a global view and save it. That way it won't overwrite the other view that I had been working with. One of the first things, if you remember on our PowerPoint, we talked about taking out some of the special formatting. Let's start by taking out this chart, because the person who's looking at this as a data file is not interested in looking at this as a chart. So remove chart. I just did a right click and I removed my chart. I also don't want to have these calculations in place, because remember, this is not, as the export, it does not carry over this full expression behind my calculations. So I'm going to hide or remove month to date. I'm also going to remove this one, year to date sales change. So it's starting to look a little bit more of like what a data file might look like. The key thing we need to think about is having all of our dimensions, all of our levels on one axis, because if someone wants to take this data and manipulate it, sort or filter it somewhere else, having these dimensions levels on one axis is more optimal for that purpose. I'm going to drag down region, and I'm just going to click, drop it there. I'm going to click on region so I can see my product brand. And now I'm, again, getting closer to what I need. There's a couple other steps I need to take, and one is to utilize a feature called repeating values. So you'll notice here this is a multi-level view, and for sake of this looking nice for people who are just using it in Viewer, we've got some blank space set up here, and we just put the region information or this first level information on the first row underneath it, and then we leave the rest blank. We need this to be filled in all the way down rows, each cell, so that the person using the data file knows that this farm fresh will belong to this particular region, and it's the eastern region. To do that, I'm going to show you two ways to do that, because it depends on what version of Viewer that you have. We have in the 6.7 release, we have something called display options, and we can control some of our common or frequently used formatting features are available to you in this window, including something called repeating item labels, repeating values. I'm going to select that for rows and do OK. And now I've got what I need down and populated on through rows. If you don't have the display options window, you can use View Explorer, pardon me. So a few extra steps, but it's still a way to go if you want to control repeating values. I'm going to double click on rows. I also could have right clicked and choose properties. And there you'll see your repeating values option. And there's also that property available by columns. So let's go back to rows. So I've gotten repeating values in place like I need them, and I think one of the last things we need to do is think about getting rid of these subtotals and grand totals. And there too I can use the display options window. I'm going to get rid of the totals by just disabling this feature. Do OK. And now I've got a little cleaner looking file. You can also control your totals if you are not at the 6.7 release. You can do that through View Explorer. And you would right click your rows folder and choose totals, yes or no, depending if you're adding totals back or hiding totals. The final thing I want to do, I mentioned my user wants to see product information in this file. So I do have that. Let me open up View Explorer again. I already have product in my view, but it's not visible yet. So I can make it visible by, in the view, clicking on product brand, and it tells me I'm going to go to product. So I'm going to save this now because I've got everything the way that I want it to look for my end user. And now let's just run through, we'll touch base again about export to Excel versus broadcast server. So we can export this. Now, I do want to point out this is 7,448 rows of data, so it may take a few extra seconds to export compared to our last file, but it still should be pretty efficient in getting us the export. I'll just pause while that's happening. I'll save that and open that. And let's zoom in a bit, or zoom out so you can see the full data file. So here we have our results. It looks the same as it did in the view. There's no chart, so there's no tab for charts. We do have our view detail tab. Again, you can copy and paste this if you want to then take this data file and send it along before you actually think about using Actions or Broadcast Server. If you don't have a need to, that's fine, but this is a nice way to test out, is this the file, end user, is this the file you're looking for? And because we have set this up to be optimized for data file use, what we can do, let's bring these ribbons back. If you are wanting to sort or filter, or your end user wants to sort or filter, they can now do that. So let's add a filter. Now it's very easy for them to just choose the parts of the file they may want to work with. Let's just do a couple of the product brands. And now I've got my filter in place to see just Western region, product brands, Idaho Delight, Southern Sweet. You can see there's other filtering options in place on all of your columns. Don't save that. The final thing I'll show you is what we did with the report, and just to reinforce something we talked about with your options of if you have a user who doesn't, who wants to see this on a regular basis, let's go ahead and assign this view. If you have an action that exists already, which we've looked at before, you would right-click in the view, choose Action, and choose that action of your choice. You will get a confirmation that you want to continue with adding it to that action. I do. Go going to exit. If you don't have an action set up yet that suits your purposes, right-click in the view, choose Add Action, and a blank window will pop up, an action window will pop up. It will automatically attach that view that you were working from to the action. Let's just do exported data file for Kim. It defaults to the user that it processes for. It defaults to the person setting up the action. That's okay, but you do have options to go into select the other users who you truly might want to send it to. So I'm going to add Kim. You have options to either email this export or have it written to a shared location. I only have a single view attached, so I'll leave single file set here. If I had 5 views attached, you could choose single file and every view would get its own exported file, or you could choose no and combine it into a single file. You can include the view details tab, and this is a 6.7 feature, so you will not see this option if you're not at 6.7 yet. You have your email section where it defaults to the view name. You can change that. You can add a message, include or exclude a link to the view. And we already have our view attached, so we'll leave it at that. And I do need to assign this action to what's called a broadcast group, which is what helps pull things together for scheduling purposes. So I'll click Add here. I've got, let's say someone wants this for Wednesday. So I'll click my predefined group, which is already set up, weekly sales midweek. Add that. And I've got a confirmation that comes up at the top of this window. You'll see that when you're adding it if you're looking for confirmation. Let's save this. And that's all set. So when that broadcast group and schedule kick off, this data file will be pulled in and exported out to my end users and emailed to them so that they can check it out, let's say, every Wednesday. This one sidebar before I kind of point out a couple other resources for learning about Export to Excel and Broadcast Server. We do have, if you're an administrator, and I think this is also a newer feature, in the application settings, there is an option to control the font size and type for your Export to Excel that are generated, the ones that are initiated from viewers' Export to Excel icon. That was just a brief sidebar. And I'm going to open up the Stratum homepage here because I'm done demoing some of our features, but I do know some of this may be a quick overview for some of you. You want to learn some more. We have a couple places where you can find, in particular, information about Broadcast Server. One of the things you can do, of course, is open up your online help. And I went into my settings menu, chose help. See if I can pull this down a bit. You can search for on Excel if you want to look up Excel topics. If you're looking for Broadcast Server, go ahead and search by that. And we have an entire section dedicated to Actions and Stratum Broadcast Server. They'll give you some quick overview information, tasks, topics that tell you step-by-step how to set things up, a review of the windows that you have within the Broadcast Server feature. If you prefer to print things out, we have a printer-friendly PDF version. You can print it out, take notes. It is a bit of a long document, just to warn you, so you may want to pick and choose what you print. We also have an Introduction to Stratum Broadcast Server video. That's about a 3-minute video that gives you a nice overview and a taste of what Broadcast Server does. And then the last resource that you can think about looking at, either out from our Sylvan website resource center, we have archived Insight classes. You can also get to those from our Stratum homepage. If you're using that within the viewer application, you will see a page that looks similar to this. And under the Insight course section, there's a View Archived Courses. And clicking that will bring you to this page on the Sylvan website. So there's 2 videos out here, or 2 recorded classes, which we've taught prior to today's class. One is called Creating Report Packets with Stratum Broadcast Server. And that goes into a lot of detail about how could you pull together 3, 5, 10 views into a single action that creates a single report, or 3, 5, or 10 reports, however you want to organize it. And all those reports at one time get processed and emailed to a user or written to a shared location, and your end user would get an email telling them your reports are ready, go check them out. So that's one video that might be useful if you want to learn more about Broadcast Server. The second one is a recorded class that we had on a higher level about actions in Broadcast Server, and it would help you get acquainted to things like actions, broadcast groups, broadcast schedules. So those are 2 pieces of information or 2 other resources you might want to consider looking at. I am going to now try and open up the phone lines so that you can, if you have questions, you're welcome to ask them. I would say
Unmuted.
I would say if you have muted your phone on your end during this call, to also make sure you've unmuted it so that I can hear your questions as they come through. And I will get back to the final slide as well while you're thinking about your questions. And if you are having, if you're asking a question and I'm not replying, that means I'm having trouble hearing you, so please do use our chat feature within WebEx. We had a little technical difficulty last time where I had to use the chat feature to respond to some questions that came through.